Hello everyone, Pulse here, and welcome to yet another episode of Delving Deep ESO. Now in today's episode, we'll be doing something a little bit different than the usual, and that will be to start off what is going to be the first of many videos where we talk about the skills and the skill lines that we're going to be having in Elder Scrolls Online, and then throughout the video I'm going to discuss really anything that catches my eye, and also the play styles that these different skill lines will attract within Elder Scrolls Online. Now, as the name of the video would suggest, we're going to start off with the class we've known about the longest, that being the Dragon Knight. Now, before I dive into the video and all of the information, and there is a ton of it, so I'm going to try and be quick and concise with this. First, it should be said that Zenimax hasn't confirmed any of the information in this video, but their showings at QuakeCon and previous videos really suggest that what we have here is at least within the realm of legitimacy and worth covering. Two, there's a lot of other people confirming this information around the net, so I feel like it's okay to cover it for you guys. The other thing that needs to be mentioned is if by chance I slip up and mention numbers, don't take them exactly as they are, because as MMOs are, they get changed a lot within the numbers game, and they'll be tweaked long after release as well. So if I mention something and I say a number, just for example, such and such ability does 6 damage, don't say, oh, 6 damage is awful. We don't know, one, the scope of that damage in terms of the other abilities, and two, like I said, these abilities are going to change in the numbers quite a lot. Now, before I jump in, I do want to say, if you don't have really a basic overview of the classes already in your head about Elder Scrolls Online, I would suggest hitting that link in the corner there, and that will take you over to the class overview. That way you can come back to this and we'll all be on the same page, and all this information can be absorbed and make total sense. Now, as I'm going into these things, I want to say that I'm going to start off with the ultimate abilities first, mainly because they actually are the main themes you'll see for the skill lines. So I'll just jump right into this one, and you'll kind of see as I go through this first skill line what I mean by that. We have a skill line by the name of Ardent Flame, and the ultimate ability for this guy is Dragon Knight Standard, which is going to make the character place down this standard as you would expect by the name, and for a couple seconds the standard is going to produce this large circle in which enemies, if they stand in it, will take fire damage for the full duration, as well as have a significant amount of healing loss. And what I mean by that is they will not receive nearly as much healing from themselves or from allies as long as they're within this radius. Now, in addition to that, we'll also be provided with the synergy ability if our allies activate it, which will shackle enemies in place and root them within our radius of this standard, and therefore confirm to us that they will be taking the full duration of the damage, and also they're going to be stuck there with this reduced healing. So that's a pretty potent combination, especially if your allies are on their toes. That's a really good ability by MMO standards for sure. Now onto the active abilities here. First up, we have Fiery Reach, which is that chain ability that we've seen quite a lot of, where you'll just shoot that out of your hand, grab an enemy, pull them towards you, scorpion style, and then you're going to do a little bit of damage during the animation of that. Then we have Searing Strike, which is just going to be a basic dot, which is going to burn your target for a couple of seconds. Now, I imagine there's going to be a tiny bit of direct damage at the beginning of that, just because of the way dots work, and you have to calculate moves hitting, but for the most part this is just going to be a fire it off and watch your target burn for a couple seconds. Now, the next ability we have is Fiery Breath, which is the ability that's actually caused a lot of arguments about lore in this game, because a lot of people don't want Thunes in the game, and this looks to be one, but we'll see. I'm not going to jump into that right now, but the idea is, as you would expect from Skyrim, to do this conal flame in front of you and deal fire damage, and then after that there will be a lingering flame on the enemies hit by that conal effect, which is, as you can see, that the theme of this is burning your target over time. Next up we have Lava Whip, which is, it's funny I just mentioned the theme of this, but this is actually not going to have a dot attached to it, and instead is going to be direct flame damage But unlike the others, instead of having a dot attached, this is going to provide a CC by causing off balance on immobile or stunned enemies. Now, off balance is not something I can comment a lot of because we don't really know exactly how that's going to play out in the action of things, but the idea is to be kind of like this added on CC. So we'll see how that plays out, but the idea is you have a CC within your toolkit there. Finally, on the active abilities for this skill line, we have Inferno, which is going to be this toggle ability, unlike the others where you just cast it and then you see the magicka drain off and you get your instant gratification in terms of damage. This is going to be a toggle where you hit the button and you wait for damage to ramp up, and as it gets higher and higher, the magicka cost is going to get higher and higher as well, and you'll have to turn that off at your own discretion. Now, I actually like these kinds of abilities a lot because it gives you a little bit more leeway and a little bit more choice, but the trade-off obviously is that you cannot deal significant damage in one go, but that's okay, because that kind of fills that niche spot where if you have the chance to let this ramp up, you can get significant AoE damage off. Now onto the passive abilities. We have Kindling, which is going to just boost the effect of your fire abilities. We have Warmth, which is going to cause fire damage, the ability to snare targets for a couple seconds. This is a significant CC in my opinion, and one that more than likely will be tweaked a little bit for PvP, because I can foresee these getting really frustrating if someone's stacking fire abilities and just pretty much infinitely allowed to slow you. But the idea is that this is going to provide some kiting ability and just overall a little bit more CC alongside your lava whip. Now the next ability here is Searing Heat, which is going to increase the duration for all of your burning effects, and then also add duration to your Dragonite standard. And that's a pretty cool buff, but it's just a typical passive buff for when you get high enough in level, your burns are going to be a little bit more burny, as you would expect. Now finally here we have World in Flames, which if you're able to go this far into the skill line and you want to use this ability, what it's going to do is very, very basic, but it's substantial, and it's going to increase the damage of all of your fire area effect abilities by a pretty nice margin here. It says 12%. Now, as I said, the numbers are going to change, but 12% by MMO standards is huge. So I would expect this ability to really come into play with people that like this run in and roast huge amounts of enemies in large flaming glory. But that sounds like a really cool passive to me. Now, as I'm sure you guys can tell, this skill line, as I kind of mentioned, is all about burning the hell out of your opponent. And simply put, to me anyway, it sounds awesome and a lot of fun. Mainly because it's not just the sit-back mage style. This is going to be more of a close to mid-range warrior that's going to be kind of in the fray and bringing down the wrath of overwhelming flames onto his opponents. And that sounds like a lot of fun to me. But more importantly than that, though, even, is that there's none of the skills here really seem to hinder what you could choose for a weapon or armor or playstyle. So the only real exception to that is a bow, but I could even foresee that being useful as an off weapon with this. And really, no matter what weapons you choose or what armor types or combo you use, you'll be able to utilize these skills quite a lot, and I fully expect them to be integrated into the toolkits of Dragonites of all types, just because they are so useful in all situations. They're mostly just damage, but all classes and all playstyles can utilize damage, and even if you're in full plate armor up in the fray, you can use this to deal some extra damage or provide support and tide turning stuff with your ultimate. Or you could be magey style and kind of play at that mid-range fire throwing crazy guy that's just close enough to deal damage but far enough away to stay safe. So that's pretty damn cool. Plus, really guys, who doesn't find controlling flame really appealing? No one? No one? Are you sure? Yeah, no one. I didn't think so. But next up on the list, guys, is Draconic Power. Now, this is really themed around the idea of making you tough. This is the one that's going to be the tanky kind of tree. This is going to be the go-to. It's not nearly as flexible, but we'll see that as we go into it. The ultimate ability for the Draconic Power skill line is Dragon Leap. Now, there's something I didn't mention, but there does seem to be differing ultimate costs. This is something I'm not going to go into right now because I've said some other things in the other video talking about finesse and stuff, but the idea would be that you could use this ability a lot more than the Dragon Standard, for example. So even though this ability seems lackluster, and what it does, I should say first, is that it allows you to jump a significant range and then deal a little bit of damage and knock them back. So the idea is this will be a much more often used ultimate ability to allow the tank mobility. And like I said, this is the tanky tree, so this really fits into that. But I could even see it maybe like a mobile melee fighter would utilize this as well. But onto the active abilities, because I feel like Dragon Leap is a good ability, but not one fit for ultimate, in my opinion. Now, Spiked Armor is the first active ability here, and just like the Fiery Reach, this is one that we've seen a lot of as well. And what it does is it allows you to resist damage for a couple seconds, but melee attackers hitting you will also receive a little bit of damage as well. So it's going to be one of those risky things. You see the Dragon Knight with Spiked Armor on. Do we hit him and try and kill him, or do we try and wait it out and allow him to really shape the way the battle is going to go on? Because for the full duration of that, the Dragon Knight can take advantage of your decision making. So that's a pretty cool ability, especially since you get it at low levels. Now the next ability is Dark Talons, and this is an ability that we actually seen during the QuakeCon footage, and it's that claw that comes out of the ground. What that does is it immobilize the enemies that are caught within that, and it's going to deal a little bit of damage if it's a target that isn't already in a Dark Talon, which means to me that this is something that you can use on multiple targets at once, which is a fantastic CC in my opinion. Rooting like this is really cool. There is one thing though, and I want to point this out. There's the Activate Synergy ability, which I mentioned during the QuakeCon video, which is actually press X to impale. And I have to give credit to a Kevin St. Pierre that gave me a comment down below and told me that this is what this was going to be, because I hadn't put that together quite right, because I thought synergies were going to work more Guild Wars 2 style, but I'm really glad this is going to be the case. And in fact, this is the ability. It's provided by Dragon Knights, which allows you to use this Impale, which will just do extra damage. So you get to CC, and if your allies are quick enough, they can provide an extra amount of burst damage on the target, and that's pretty cool. And again, a thank you to Kevin St. Pierre for pointing that out to me. Now next up on the list here is Dragon Blood. This heals for a fourth of your max health, and it also increases your health regeneration for a couple seconds. This is a pretty cool ability, but I'll get to the end and really explain what I see here with the skills, and it's going to have something to do with this ability and some of the others. We have Reflective Scale. This is just a very basic reflect projectile skill, but anyone that's played MMOs, especially in PvP, will tell you that reflect skills are very good. Now, the next one we have here, and the final active for this skill line, is Inhale, and it's going to absorb health from nearby enemies near you, and then it's also going to do magic damage to those enemies which you've absorbed health. This is a pretty cool ability as well, and not one I can think there's been too much use of, especially from a tank perspective, where you kind of heal health and siphon that off and then turn it into damage instead of like reflecting. It's a little bit different. I like the flavor of that. Now, the passive abilities for the skill line are these. First off, we have Iron Skin, which is just you take a little bit extra damage or less damage when you block. You have Burning Heart, which increases healing received while you're affected by dragon abilities. So while you have Spiked Armor on, or Dragon Blood on, or even Reflective Scales, I would think, you'll get a little extra healing as well, I would imagine, from yourself, which is that Dragon Blood ability. Next up we have Elder Dragon, which increases health regeneration for each dragon ability on your hotbar. So this means that you don't even have to have these abilities active. It just means that you can have this toolkit in place, and just by having those choices you become more tanky and more hard to kill. That's pretty cool in my book. And then last up is scaled armor, which is, in my opinion, is pretty boring for a final skill, and it's just a spell resistance for a significant amount. Now, here's all the skills for the Dragon Knight that really make him tanky, as I mentioned, and as Zenimax promised, the Dragon Knight could be. Now, I've never really been a fan of playing a tank, so it's hard for me to really gauge how appealing these skills look to somebody that does like tanking, especially when you try to compare them to previous MMOs, because they look similar, but it's hard to say if this is more appealing, at least for me. Now, one thing that did catch my attention, I kind of mentioned earlier with the Dragon Blood ability, is that there's a lot of more self-healing and self-preservation with Dragon Blood and the reflection abilities, and that really is, it kind of reminds me of the Dragon, or Death Knight rather, from WoW. And of all the tanks, it's the one that I actually played a little bit of, and I found the most engaging. Now, as I said, I don't play tanks a lot in MMOs, but of the ones that I've played, the Death Knight was what I found the most fun. And I think that's because of the self-healing aspects, instead of it just being you have an enormous health pool. That's pretty damn cool. And really, it's a boon for the skill line in my book, in this playstyle. Now, one final note, though, is that these skills may not be the most interesting, as I've kind of mentioned. They don't even sound fun, but I foresee these skills being pretty amazing in solo play and PvP as well, actually. Even if you're going to go for the high-end PvE and you're going to be a tank, as I said, it's going to be a little bit more engaging than the typical tank. But I can really foresee, especially in PvP, because the self-healing is annoying as sin, but more importantly than that is the reflection. The ability to reflect projectiles and make your enemies take damage when they try to attack you is devastating sometimes, and it's actually one of the things that it has become a potent part of high-up PvP, is the best way to utilize your reflection and that sort of thing. So I foresee that skill line being utilized, maybe not in such a way as the first skill line that I mentioned. I'm blanking hardcore on the name of that. But the idea is that Ardent Flame will maybe have, oh, there it is, it just came out by accident, that you'll be able to utilize those skills a little bit more at your discretion and spread them out across playstyles. This is going to be a little bit more concrete. You're going to want to stick with multiple skills because of the way your passives work. You get more by using more. So that's not going to be as much of a hybrid friendly skill line, but I do think it's going to be powerful, and one that will be utilized throughout any form of gameplay, be it PvE or PvP. Now finally here we have Earthen Heart. The ultimate ability for this skill line is Magma Armor. Now, this is more similar to the Dragon Leap in that its cost looks to be significantly lower than the Dragon Knight Standard, and you'll be able to use this more often. But it looks to be that incoming damage is capped at a certain amount of your max health. So what this means is you'll have this ability on you for a couple seconds, and it will damn nearly make you invincible if you have over this threshold. So for example, it says 3% here. If you use this ability on someone that has more than 3% of their max health, that means that they cannot be killed for those 9 seconds under normal circumstances. Obviously there will be some caveats to this, be it you can't jump off an edge or like fall into lava, that kind of thing. But in addition to that, really powerful, like tank saver, I would call it. This is usually something you would say, like a tank saving cooldown or a self-saving cooldown in other MMO games. That's a pretty damn good ability by itself. But in addition, the person that has this on them and enemies near them will take fire damage as well. That's a pretty damn cool ability. And like I said, I feel like this is going to be one utilized on tanks in high-end PvE a lot. Sorry, losing my voice there for a second. Onto the active abilities, though, we have Stone Fist, which is going to be this like instant physical damage and knockdown. We've seen this actually. It's where the character kind of throws a rock from their fist, as you would think by the name there, and it just like knocks them down instantly on their ass. And you get that fairly early on, so that's a pretty cool CC ability straight from the beginning, and I can actually see that being utilized in the other skill lines as well. The next one here is Molten Weapons. Now this increases the power of all nearby allies, and if you use it on yourself, oh, okay, actually, when I'm reading this now, it looks to be you cast this, and it's going to give yourself a bonus, and then it's going to give all your allies near you half of the bonus that you receive. So this is going to be a nice group-wide damage buff for a significant amount of time. They list 45 seconds, which to me tells me that they're going to use this as you cast this throughout a long encounter to keep your damage as high as possible. Now, next up here we have Obsidian Shield, which is going to create a damage shield for 20 seconds they list here, which is a pretty good amount of time for an absorption shield. And what it's going to do is take a significant amount of incoming damage, 40 to 50% I would imagine, and then if you use it on yourself, it's going to boost that to a 100% damage decrease, or absorption I should say. And that's a pretty cool ability, and one I didn't even realize was in the game actually until reading this. Next up we have Petrify, which is another CC. It's going to stun for 10 seconds, which is significant by MMO standards, and as I keep mentioning, the numbers are not concrete here, but the idea is that this is going to be a rather long duration CC, but it's going to increase the health regeneration of the person stunned. So this will be something to use in sort of an encounter where you need to separate targets, which is typical in MMOs, but there doesn't seem to be so many hard CCs, they're called, where they're just knocked out for minutes on end and you don't have to deal with them. This is going to be something that you have to reapply and use effectively, but it's long enough that you could really use it to shift the way a battle is going. If a mob is really wrecking your healer, you can use this to keep them off them until the tank has a time to shift the battlefield. Now finally, on the actives list, we have Ash Cloud, which this is going to put down this AoE where enemies standing in this ash cloud are going to be slowed and snared, and they're also going to have a significant mischance debuff given to them, so you'll be able to reduce damage on your allies. And then addition to this, allies who are in this shroud of ash are going to have this synergy which allows them to avoid attacks for 4 seconds. So this AoE ability, which you can put down kind of on your group of allies, is going to allow you to significantly reduce damage through evasion and just straight up avoiding the damage from hitting you. That's a pretty potent ability, one that actually I feel is, depending on its cost of magicka, obviously, that could be an ability I would have expected to be an ultimate. Actually, that's a pretty damn good ability in all forms of gameplay. Now, finally, we're going to hit the passives here. We have Eternal Mountain, which is just going to increase the duration of your Earth abilities. We have Deep Breaths, which is going to, on activation of your ultimate, which in this case was Magma Armor, but you can switch them obviously, it's going to restore health, magicka, and stamina based on the cost of that ultimate. So in this case, Magma Armor, but if you have one that costs a lot more, so you have to wait longer to get it, this is going to give you health, magicka, and stamina. That's a pretty damn good passive as well. It's going to really give the people playing sort of very engaging support roles in particular, which there's a lot of abilities for that. It's going to give them longevity and choice with what they're going to use, and makes it a little bit easier to gauge how the encounter is going to go if you can time your ultimate usage properly. Now, the next one, Mountain's Blessing, kind of goes alongside that, which is you gain 2 additional ultimate from the finesse abilities anyway. You'll get 2 extra towards your ultimate bar when you activate an Earth ability. So you'll be able to use these 2 passives to really go back and forth between gaining ultimate quickly and then using it up to provide longevity to your output. And that's a pretty damn good combination of passives. And then finally, we have Helping Hands, which is gain stamina when one of your Earth abilities targets another player. Now this is pretty cool because A lot of the other abilities in this skill line really put you in a position to play like a support role, but this passive, along with the way that the ultimate works and gives damage, and the way that you can boost your own damage with molten weapons, means that you can actually, if you want to, play more support melee hybrid, actually. And that's pretty damn cool. Actually, I can even see, I said melee, but I can see a bow user doing this as well, sitting there picking at the enemies with the bow, and then kind of going in there with the support skills when they're needed. That's pretty damn cool. And I have to say, this is an interesting skill line, and in fact, I have to admit that I hadn't paid much attention to this skill line, even though I've looked at them a long time ago, and I really like what I see here, because there's a lot of support potential, both in the form of substantial CCs, or crowd control if you're not familiar with that term, and there's multiple skills which protect your allies. I mean, we have the Absorption Shield from Obsidian Shield, alongside Ash Cloud, and the synergy provided from that to protect allies, and it actually reminds me a lot of Discipline Priests from WoW, and that's good, kind of like I said with the Death Knight thing a while ago, because in the same vein as the Draconic Power skill line, it's very engaging in terms of play style, and in the case of Elder Scrolls Online, I fully expect people to play this in mainly two different ways, depending on how, because of the way you can hybrid so well in this game. I can really see a lot of people going for a DPS / support hybrid role, kind of how I mentioned you can use the bow alongside the Helping Hands passive to get in some damage along with your support, but I can also see going the typical route of healer and support, like full support, by grabbing a restoration staff and going deep into that skill line, and using the absorption shields to keep your party alive and fighting along with your healing, and then using the ash cloud and your magma armor to keep the encounter going through the tough stuff, through the really hard and constant damage that are typical in high-end PvE, and I expect to see if they intend to give us challenge. That's a pretty damn cool prospect to me, and one that actually makes me want to give this a try and see what it's all about, because I've always liked the idea of a more engaging playstyle when it came to both tanks and healers. Healers I always found a little bit more appealing, and I played them quite frequently in MMOs when I'm not pew-pewing from afar with my bow or just roasting face or whatever in a DPS role. But the idea of healing through actually not healing but preventing the damage is a pretty cool concept to me. And really, this is a bunch of exciting stuff, but the real icing on the cake is that these specializations aren't exclusive either, I should say, right now. That the Earth and Heart abilities can be easily integrated into the Draconic Power and the Ardent Flame and so on and so forth, and you can pick and choose. You don't have to just stick to one. And even though it's more than likely just the way that MMOs work out, that picking one skill line while leveling and staying focused on one will provide the best results in terms of speed of leveling anyway. As you're able to level up and branch out into these other skill lines, you'll be able to have a lot more options, significantly, really, both in the size pool of abilities and the possibilities with the way that you hybrid your playstyle and the abilities that we have. It's a pretty exciting prospect. And guys, that's really all there is to the Dragonite, though. It's still, I don't know, it's a skill line which, so far, it looks good, but it's, I don't know. I feel like I can see myself playing the Earth and Heart and the Ardent Flame more than the Draconic Power, but I can definitely foresee now in my head ways to hybrid, especially with the ultimates, because I actually like the Magma Armor ability a lot, and I can see myself maybe tinkering with that to use it in an Ardent Flame tanky build. That would be badass, I think. But before I go on, I do want to mention just one more time before we end, so that everyone realizes this. These aren't 100% confirmed by Zenimax in any way. The numbers are not concrete, but there's multiple sources around the net, and due to the QuakeCon footage, they pretty much give us a mirror to look at and compare, and it makes these skill lines legit in my book. And it's safe to say that we can expect these skills to at least be similar to these upon ESO's release. Now guys, this has been Pulse, and as always I want to thank you so much for watching. I'd like to ask you to give this guy a thumbs up, to subscribe, and comment down below on anything even remotely related to this video or to my channel as a whole, really. And stick to Nova Pulse Gaming for everything ESO and gaming in general. So thanks again guys, and I'll see you next one. Bye.